Elena Voss remembered every second of the night Damian Cross broke their bond. She remembered the torches lighting the courtyard, the silence of hundreds of pack members standing in rows, and the way his voice did not shake even once when he said the words that ended everything between them. He stood tall in front of his court, the alpha king of the northern packs, and told them all that she was no longer his mate. No explanation, no softness, just a cold announcement that cut through her like claws through skin. She had not cried in front of anyone that night. She waited until she was far from the packlands, in a small rented room in a quiet town where no wolf would recognize her scent, before she let herself break. The bond had been more than a feeling. It had been a thread connecting her heart to his, and when he tore it, she felt something inside her chest rip loose. For weeks she could barely eat. For months she could barely sleep. But slowly, the way humans and wolves alike learn to survive great pain, she rebuilt herself. 2 years passed. Elena found work at a small clinic, using the herbal knowledge her grandmother had taught her. She made new friends who knew nothing about packs or alphas or broken bonds. She let her hair grow long again, the way she used to wear it before she became a queen's shadow. She told herself, again and again, that she was healed. She almost believed it. Then, one gray morning, a car she did not recognize pulled up outside the clinic. 2 men stepped out, dressed in the deep green of the Northern Pack's guard uniform. Elena's whole body went still. She had not seen that uniform in 2 years, and the sight of it brought back a flood of memories she had worked hard to bury. "Elena Voss," the taller guard said, his voice respectful but urgent. "We need to speak with you. It concerns the Alpha King." "I have nothing to do with the Alpha King anymore," she said, keeping her voice steady, even as her heart pounded. He made that very clear. The guard exchanged a glance with his companion. "Please. It is a matter of great importance. Lives depend on it." Elena almost refused. She almost closed the door and told them to leave her alone forever. But something in the guard's eyes, a kind of desperate fear she had never seen on a Northern Pack soldier before, made her pause. These were proud wolves. They did not come to a human town looking afraid, unless something terrible was happening. She agreed to a meeting, though she made it clear it would be brief, and it would be on her terms, in a public cafe, not pack territory. That afternoon, sitting across from 2 guards who kept glancing nervously toward the door, Elena learned that war was coming. A rival alpha, named Malachi Thorne, had been growing his forces for over a year, absorbing smaller packs, some by agreement and some by force. Thorne had set his sights on the northern packs, and unless something changed, the war would begin within weeks. "Why does this concern me?" Elena asked, though a small, unwanted part of her already feared the answer. The guard hesitated. "Alpha Cross has not been himself since the bond was broken. His wolf grows more restless with each passing month. He struggles to fully shift. His strength, once unmatched, has weakened. The pack elders believe. They believe the broken bond is killing him slowly, and without his full strength, we cannot win this war." Elena felt anger rise in her chest, sharp and hot. He broke it, not me. If his own choice is destroying him, that is not something I can fix. "We understand your anger," the guard said gently, "but there is something you should know. He did not want to sever the bond. He was forced by circumstances he has never spoken of, even to us. All we know is that since that night, he has not smiled once. Not once, my lady." Elena did not answer. She stood, thanked them for their honesty, and walked home in silence, her mind spinning with questions she thought she had buried forever. That night, she could not sleep. She sat by her window, staring at the moon, and for the first time in 2 years, she allowed herself to remember the way Damian used to look at her, before everything fell apart. The warmth in his eyes. The way his wolf used to nuzzle against her palm like an oversized, overprotective puppy, even though he was the most feared alpha in the region. She had loved him with everything she had, and he had thrown it away without a single word of explanation. 3 days later, Elena received an urgent message asking her to attend a diplomatic gathering between neutral territories and the Northern Pack Council, purely as an advisor on human relations given her work at the clinic. She almost said no, but curiosity, or perhaps something deeper she refused to name, pulled her toward the meeting hall. She saw him the moment she walked in. Damien Cross stood at the head of a long table, dressed in formal dark clothing, his shoulders as broad as she remembered, though there was a tiredness in his face that had not been there before. Deep shadows sat beneath his eyes. His usually commanding presence seemed dimmed, like a fire that had been starved of air for too long. Their eyes met across the room, and for a moment, neither of them breathed. Then, without warning, something happened that made the entire room fall into stunned silence. Damien's body jerked violently. He gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles turning white, and a low, pained growl rumbled from his chest. His advisors rushed toward him, but he raised a hand, warning them back. "Get her out," one advisor whispered urgently, meaning Elena, fearing danger. But Elena did not move. Something ancient and instinctive inside her, some remnant of the mate bond that had never truly disappeared, despite what Damien had done, told her this was not a threat. This was pain. Damien's form shifted, though incompletely and unnaturally, his wolf fighting to break free from a body that could not fully release it. Fur rippled along his arms, his eyes flashed amber, and a sound came from him that was not quite human and not quite wolf. It was a plea. A raw, desperate plea that seemed to come not from Damien the King, but from the wolf inside him that had been suffering in silence for 2 long years. "Come back," the sound seemed to say, broken and pained. "Please, come back." The room stared in shock, but Elena felt something inside her own chest respond. An old, familiar pull she thought had been severed completely. She realized, with a jolt that stole her breath, that the bond had never truly been broken. It had been damaged, twisted, suppressed, but some thread still remained, thin and frayed, connecting them still. She stepped forward before she could stop herself, kneeling beside him as his advisors backed away in confusion. She placed her palm against his chest, right where the bond mark had once glowed between them. "Breathe," she whispered. "I'm here." Slowly, painfully, his body settled. The shift reversed. His breathing calmed. When he finally looked at her, his eyes were clear and full of something she had not seen in 2 years. Relief. And beneath that, deep and aching regret. They spoke privately later that night, in a quiet room away from the council. Elena stood with her arms crossed, refusing to soften too quickly, though her heart pounded with a mixture of anger and something far more complicated. "Tell me the truth," she said. "Tell me why you broke it." Damien looked at her for a long moment before finally speaking, his voice low and rough. "There is an old prophecy among the northern packs. It says that during the coming war, the mate of the reigning Alpha King would become the primary target of enemies, seeking to destroy him from within. Thorn's people had already begun asking questions about you. I feared that if they knew you were my mate, they would use you against me, or worse, they would end your life simply to weaken mine. So you broke the bond to protect me," Elena said slowly, disbelief and pain mixing together in her voice. "I thought if I severed it publicly, if the whole pack believed you meant nothing to me anymore, you would become invisible to my enemies. I thought it would keep you safe." His voice cracked slightly. "I did not know it would nearly destroy us both instead. I did not know my wolf would refuse to accept the separation, no matter how much I forced it." Elena felt tears sting her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "You made that choice for me. You took away my ability to decide whether I wanted to be safe or wanted to stand beside you." "I know," Damien said quietly, "and I have regretted it every single day since. I told myself it was strength, protecting you through distance. But it was cowardice. I was afraid of losing you to Thorn's forces, so I lost you to my own foolish decision instead." Silence stretched between them, heavy and painful. Elena thought of the guard's words, of Damien's suffering, of her own 2 years of quiet grief. She thought of the war coming, the danger to countless lives, not just their own. "If I agree to restore the bond," she finally said, "it will not be because I forgive what you did easily. It will not be because everything is suddenly fixed. It will be because I choose it, with open eyes, knowing the danger, knowing the cost. Not because you decide what is best for me without asking." Damien looked at her with something like awe. "That is more than I deserve." "Probably," Elena said, allowing a small, sad smile to cross her lips. But I am not doing this only for you. Your people need their king at full strength. And somewhere along the way, despite everything, I never stopped caring what happens to them, or to you. The rebonding ceremony took place 2 nights later, quiet and private, without the grand spectacle of the breaking. As their bond restored beneath the moonlight, Elena felt warmth flood back into a part of her heart she thought had gone cold forever. Damien's wolf, finally free from its 2-year torment, let out a sound that was pure relief rather than pain. The following week, Thorn's forces reached the northern border. The battle that followed was fierce and costly, testing every pack member's courage. But Damien fought with the full strength of a bonded Alpha King once more, quick, powerful, and clear-headed in ways he had not been in years. Elena stayed near the healer's camp, using her human medical knowledge alongside pack healers to save as many lives as possible, refusing to hide safely away while others fought. When the battle finally ended, Thorn's forces retreated, broken and scattered, their ambitions crushed by a united and restored northern pack. The cost had been heavy, losses were mourned, but the kingdom stood, stronger for having survived. In the days that followed, as the pack began rebuilding what the war had damaged, Damien stood once more before his court, this time with Elena beside him, her hand held firmly in his. 2 years ago, he said, his voice carrying across the courtyard, I made a choice out of fear, believing I was protecting the one I loved most. I was wrong. Real protection is not built on secrecy or separation. It is built on trust, and on standing together, even when the danger is great. He turned to Elena, his eyes full of a warmth that had been missing for far too long. I name Elena Voss not only as my mate, but as my equal in leading this pack forward. Her strength, her wisdom, and her courage have proven themselves beyond any doubt. The courtyard erupted into approval, wolves howling in celebration, beneath the same moon that had once witnessed their painful separation. Elena looked up at Damien, feeling the bond between them settle into something new, something stronger than before, forged not merely by fate, but by choice, by honesty, and by the shared trials they had faced together. The scar where their bond had once been broken remained, a faint mark neither of them tried to hide, but it no longer represented loss. It stood instead as a reminder of survival, of a love tested by fear and rebuilt through truth, strong enough now to face whatever challenges still lay ahead.